Welcome back, everyone. This lesson is going to focus on two different types of ExpressRoute models that we need to be familiar with. In this lesson, we will start off with a quick overview of the two different types of deployment models we are going to be focusing on. The first of which is going to focus on connectivity models, from which we will break down the differences between the service provider and the direct model. Afterwards, we will change our focus to our other model we are going to focus on, which is that of service models, or in other words, the ExpressRoute circuit SKUs we need to be familiar with, of which each of them have different cross-region connectivity restrictions. Jumping on into it, the two main types of deployment models we are going to focus on in this lesson is that we're going to start off with connectivity models, or in other words, how you connect your network to Microsoft, following which we will shift our focus onto service models, which are the different regional restrictions that come with different ExpressRoute circuit SKUs. With that, let's take a look at our first deployment model method, and that is of connectivity models, or again, how we connect our network to Microsoft. So what we are going to focus on is taking a look at the middle part of this example ExpressRoute topology, in which we're looking at how we connect our on-premises network to the Microsoft Edge network and really everything else in between. With our connectivity models, we have four possible implementations that we need to cover. Let's look at them now. So when it comes to connectivity models, we have three of one type and one of another type. Let me expand that. Our first three connectivity models to focus on is that of Cloud Exchange Co-location model, point-to-point Ethernet connection, and any-to-any connection. These three connectivity models are grouped together in that they are known as a service provider model, and our fourth model, which is very different to those three, is known as ExpressRoute Direct, which is referred to as a direct model. So in other words, we have a grouping of service provider models and a direct model. Let's go ahead and expand on each one of those connectivity models. The first, which is a Cloud Exchange Co-location. And for a pretty high-level explanation of these three models, a Cloud Exchange Co-location is useful if you already have some sort of a data center presence in the same physical co-location data center space as your existing service provider that you're going to use for facilitating that ExpressRoute connection. In this model, you're in a shared data center space and you're already in the same location as your service provider, in which case your service provider simply needs to set up a cross connection since you're both already there and you're pretty much all set. Our next service provider model is that of point-to-point. In a really brief explanation, this is used when you're connecting from your own data center that you manage yourself or an office location in which you are not already sharing existing physical space with the service provider. Essentially, your service provider will facilitate the connection from your own location to their own networking hardware and then connect to Microsoft's Edge from there. And then our last service provider model is that of any-to-any. These are more useful in situations in which you are integrating an existing WAN or an SD-WAN, maybe using MPLS. And in these examples, our ExpressRoute circuit simply becomes just another branch office in our existing WAN setup. The fourth model we want to look at, which is very different from the other three, is that of ExpressRoute Direct. Working with ExpressRoute Direct, we are establishing a direct connection from our on-premises network directly into the Microsoft Edge peering location. Or in other words, you are directly connecting your own network equipment right into a Microsoft Edge router, in which you actually own or have full access to the physical ports, again, directly in Microsoft's Edge servers. How this is different from our other models is that we are essentially removing the partner Edge hardware out of the equation and instead directly connecting from our own on-premises network directly into the Microsoft Edge, therefore bypassing the partner Edge middleware in between. Now, with this model, you can still use a service provider to help facilitate those physical connections on your behalf. However, that connection does not go through the service provider router that sits in the middle. And finally, revisiting our previous lesson on encryption. When using the ExpressRoute Direct model, this gives us the ability to use MACsec encryption, which is a layer 2 encryption protocol. Next, we'll move on to a quick comparison of our service provider model, or models more accurately, compared to with our direct model. Breaking down our differences between these two models, starting off with the service provider. A service provider model has you partner with an ExpressRoute specific service provider to help facilitate those connections. Whereas with the direct model, we can use any service provider, assuming that service provider is able to help facilitate the actual physical connections from your network directly into Microsoft. From a speed or a bandwidth perspective, the service provider model offers a variety of connection speeds from 50 megabits to 10 gigabits per second, whereas the direct model has much higher overall speeds, which offer from 5 gigabits per second on the low end, all the way up to a blistering fast 100 gigabits per second, which is really useful for massive data ingestion needs. Basically, the direct model is much faster, and of course, there is a price tag to match that. From a connectivity standpoint, when using the service provider model, we are connecting over the service provider's network, or in other words, the service provider's hardware, which is usually a multi-tenant hardware setup in which we are sharing that physical hardware with other tenants at the same time. Whereas with the direct model, we are using physically isolated network hardware in which we are not sharing service provider hardware with anyone else, which is really useful for strict regulation or compliance requirements. Moving on, let's change our focus from connectivity models and now take a look at the three main service models that we need to be familiar with, which each have a variety of cross-region connectivity restrictions or abilities. These are going to be our ExpressRoute circuit SKUs that we need to be familiar with. When talking about service provider models, we have three models we are going to expand. That is of ExpressRoute Standard, ExpressRoute Local, and ExpressRoute Premium. Let's take a close look at each one of those. Starting off with ExpressRoute Standard, as its name implies, it is the quote-unquote default or standard ExpressRoute circuit type. When using ExpressRoute Standard, it gives you the ability from a region connectivity perspective to connect across multiple Azure regions within a single geopolitical region. Now, from a terminology perspective, when we say geopolitical region, we are roughly talking about all regions within a given continent. We have a couple examples below for your reference. For example, we have the Europe and the North America geopolitical region when working with ExpressRoute Standard. And if we take a look at the available regions on each of those geopolitical regions, the Europe region gives us access to essentially every Azure region within the continent of Europe, and the North America geopolitical region gives us access to all of the Azure regions in both the United States and Canada that you can see there. And on the right side, we have the city locations, which host the Microsoft Edge routers we are connecting to as our hopping off point into the Microsoft network. And you can see we have a wide variety of cities with those specific geopolitical regions that you can see there. Next, let's take a look at ExpressRoute Local. Now, ExpressRoute Local is very different in that compared to ExpressRoute Standard, an ExpressRoute Local circuit can only connect to regions near your physical peering location. This is typically only a single region that we have access to. Compared to our other ExpressRoute SKUs, it is the most cost-effective, in other words, the least expensive. And one notable perk when working with ExpressRoute Local is that inbound and outbound data is free. This comes with our unlimited billing model in which all incoming and outgoing data has no charge. From a use case perspective, ExpressRoute Local is most ideal for lower cost circuits in which we need higher data transfer needs, in other words, more data going in and out, and we do not necessarily need to have access to multiple regions at the same time. If we only need access to a single region and we want the lowest cost, highest data allotment connection possible, well, this is the one to go with. A couple examples of ExpressRoute Local are below, in which we have a single location, in this case Chicago. Specifically, there's a Chicago and Chicago 2 location, and we can see underneath the local Azure regions column that we are limited to a single Azure region, in this case North Central US. That is the only location, at least when using the Chicago ExpressRoute Local circuit, that we are able to directly connect to. The last ExpressRoute service model or ExpressRoute SKU to focus on is that of ExpressRoute Premium. The main perk or difference when working with ExpressRoute Premium is that it gives us global connectivity. In other words, a single ExpressRoute Premium circuit can directly connect to all geopolitical regions all around the world. Also, in addition to global connectivity, with ExpressRoute Premium, we are essentially getting more stuff, such as more routing table limits, more VNet connections, just more stuff that we can connect to in general. ExpressRoute Premium also allows us to connect privately to Microsoft 365 services, and it also comes with another feature called Global Reach, which we are going to talk about in more detail a little bit later on in this section. With that, it's going to go ahead and conclude this overview of our two different deployment models to focus on when working with ExpressRoute, that of different connectivity models and service models, or in other words, circuit SKUs. There is still a lot more ground to cover. However, let's go ahead and review our key takeaways before we move on to our next lesson. We started off with the 4 different connectivity models available with ExpressRoute, 3 of which were under the service provider model, and we also talked about the direct model as well. We also broke down the differences between the service provider and direct models. With the service provider model, we connect through a service provider, or in other words, their service provider equipment. It provides a range of speeds from 50 megabits to 10 gigabits per second, and we share hardware space with other tenants on that service provider as well. By comparison, our direct model is a direct connection to Microsoft's Edge using isolated hardware that we are not sharing with anyone else, and it offers speeds up to 100 gigabits per second. And then finally, we talked about our three different ExpressRoute service models, or ExpressRoute circuit SKUs, in which we talked about ExpressRoute Standard, which gives us geopolitical connectivity, ExpressRoute Local, which is limited to a single region. However, it also has the lowest cost and provides unlimited data as well. And then finally, we discussed ExpressRoute Premium, which provides global connectivity and a useful feature called Global Reach. Again, more on that later. That's going to go ahead and wrap up this lesson. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one.